Hello and welcome to Star Revelations with the fabulous Maria Jones and myself, Morgana Sophia. Maria, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello. We've got lots to talk about today.
We have indeed, and dear listener, it is our last episode of 2025. So grab your mulled wine, crack open the mince pies, sit back, and for the last time in this calendar year, you can hear all about the astrology of 2026. I'm really excited about 2026. Maria, how are you feeling about the year that is to come?
Do you know, I will be so delighted to see the end of Saturn in Pisces. I cannot tell you, if I'm being really honest, I cannot tell you how much I am looking forward to the shifts of next year out of this watery kind of swampy kind of energy into air and fire, which suits me perfectly as an Aries with an Aquarius rising.
Ever so combustible, and I think you and I exchanged messages previously where we're a little bit pissed off with Pisces at the moment. It really has been a wet and kind of not insipid year per se, but just kind of it's been watery and emotional, which neither of us particularly like, let's be honest.
Well, I think it's just been this kind of backwards and forwards as well, hasn't it? Where we had this kind of taste of these planets shifting into other signs, Aries, Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, Urania going into Gemini. And then you're kind of like plunged back into this, watery kind of subconscious energy again. So we know that with astrology, all transits are relevant, all transits have their purpose. And I think, this Piscean energy that's taking us through the end of the year is giving us this final kind of deep cleanse, isn't it? But I will be really delighted when that time of, lingering around in the kind of healing waters is over and we can finally get some proper action and forward movement.
And I agree. In fact, we are actually recording this on the day that Neptune goes direct in Pisces as well. So we are beginning to just see the turn. Saturn went direct, it was about a week and a half ago. So we're just starting to feel that turn. But yeah, we have still got the festive season to go through in these healing waters, which, like you, I will be really glad to see the end of. There's only so much shadow work I can do, and I love doing that kind of stuff. It's like, no, I'm done. I want dry land. I need some fire and a little bit of kind of combustion from the air. And plus, as well, numerologically, we are closing out a 9 year as well. So for a lot of us, it's been about shedding physically, emotionally, spiritually as well. So it'd be really nice to get in a place where to be going to next year, it's kind of starting a cycle again. It's where I get really excited, starting new stuff.
Absolutely. I think the Pisces energy has been, really heavy with these Neptune and Saturn conjunctions. Saturn in a water sign and Saturn in Pisces is always a fairly unpleasant experience. I think for us collectively, the last one was in Scorpio, which was our Saturn return 2014, 2015. But Pisces energy itself, because Pisces is known for its ability to be a little bit fantastical or, dare we say, delusional. And Saturn just comes through that like a weight, Saturn just comes through there, kind of dispelling all of our illusions, which I think, for humans, we like something to be hopeful about, don't we? That's like,
Yes.
there's no hope here, only the void. I will
So as
not
we
be
stand
sad
on
to
the
see the
precipice,
end of it.
as we stand on the precipice of 2026, looking into the void. No, let's make it a much better year, I think. But it does start off as a really fantastically powerful year. I know you and I have both written kind of our astrological essay of the year ahead, and it does really feel like the start of 26, pretty much up until the autumn equinoxes. There's a lot going on, a lot.
Yeah, that really is. And I think this year is um, really, the overarching kind of archetypical signatures are going to be this Aries energy and Aquarius.
Mm.
So, and also, with Urania going in Gemini too. So, air and fire together, like you say, they're combustible, they're moving very fast. And it
Mm.
is going to be the year of the fire horse as well, the year of the sun, planetary numerology wise, and the year of the magician. So, when you think about all of this, we've really got this frequency of creative expression. But also, I think for me, the main thing that I am really tuning into for this Saturn Neptune in Aries energy is this kind of radical self responsibility.
Mm.
Because Pisces is, the opposite of that. Pisces is all very much, codependency, giving your power away. We're coming to the end of that Piscean aeon as well, where we have been giving our power away to religions, to authorities, to other people. And Aries energy won't have any of that. So for me, I think this is the year of really, taking back our power. This is who I am. This is what I desire. So it's really invoking that energy of the warrioress, I think, from a goddess astrology perspective. So yeah, and also with
I
that
think
very
we're,
cosmic Aquarian energy.
I think we saw that a little bit at the middle of this year. But as you kind of like talking about kind of the fall of religion, and the one thing that we've both chatted about, both on the podcast and both when we've been nattering about life, is the rise of kind of fundamentalism in all three of the major Abrahamic religions. We're not just going to single anyone out in the age of Pisces, but it's this sense for me that when Neptune goes into Aries, there could be a lot of religious kind of revolution as well. So if we kind of look back, I'm sure the dissolution of the monasteries with Henry VIII was one of the periods. Last time we had Neptune in Aries was kind of the rise of the new age of spirituality. So that was kind of the 1860s as well. But the one thing I'm really feeling is there's going to be a real set of people who cling on to religious organizations and kind of almost enjoy the suppression where other people are going to be quite revolutionary about it. So I'm going to see there's going to be a real, I feel a real schism, and I really feel this when you look at the big, what I call the American super churches. The zeal within that. For me, Neptune in Aries is going to actually add some fire to that, as well as seeing kind of religious reform, because I've got a feeling now we have a female Archbishop of Canterbury here in the UK, Church of England. There could be some moving and shaking. That very much that process to elect an archbishop takes a long time. So that for me is like that trailblazing move into a lot of in the UK religious reform to the what is currently the national religion. I'm allowed to say that, by the way. The king is head of is the titular head of the Church of England. So I can see that there's going to be a lot of change in that. That's what I'm really feeling. New king, new Archbishop of Canterbury, there could be some real changes there. So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how people respond to that.
Well, I think this year, just jumping ahead and thinking about the the nodes moving into Aquarius and Leo, Jupiter coming into Leo as well
Mm.
in June, and the nodes will be switching on the 18th of August, but we'll have our first eclipse in Aquarius in February this year, 29 degrees, or sorry, 28 degrees of Aquarius. Because, yeah, as those of you who know astrology will know, we kind of sometimes having these overlays and overlaps with the nodal cycles or the eclipse cycles as the nodes get close to the edge of their signs. So I think what we've got here, this kind of overarching combination of energy that we've got, if we look at it from the perspective of things manifesting in the collective, is we've got this polarity of Leo, hierarchy,
Mm.
royalty, and Aquarius, humanity, radical revolution. So I think what we're going to see next year on a collective level is with this Aries and Aquarius energy, people want freedom, people want equality, people want autonomy, because if you know any Aries or Aquarius, you know that you just don't try and tell them what to do. You just don't. You know, they're going to go their own way, a bit like Geminis, you know, they're the other sign that does that. And Uranus is heading into Gemini as well. So these are signs that are very free thinking. You know, they're
Mm.
very radical. They want self-governance. So
Mm.
what we're going to see here is, you know, people wanting freedom, people wanting to move into this new Aquarian energy. But because Saturn is also authoritarianism, and
Mm.
Leo is wanting to maintain power at any cost, and I have some more things to say about Leo and Aquarius today, actually, but they want to maintain power at any cost. You know, what we're going to see is people, you know, these uprisings that we're seeing, they're going to continue, but the boot will come down harder as well. That Saturnian boot of suppression could come down harder. So the way that people are rebelling is very important, because we don't want to rebel to the point where that energy of Saturn in Aries can be invoked, you know, for things like digital IDs, martial law. So yes, yeah, there's going to be a really
So,
fine line to walk here.
talking of digital ID, quite interesting because before we came on and we were chatting earlier before we pre-record, we always have a good natter. I forgot to say to you that I'd had an email through because digital ID had been debated in Parliament, and I was reading part of the extract that came through from having signed that petition. It's really clear that people don't want it. And it's also very clear if you start to read between the lines and you listen to the energy of what was said, that it potentially really is going to happen and we will not have a choice in this. And, you know, just really thinking about Saturn being in Aries, if we think about that and how we rebel this time around, but if we think about last time Saturn was in Aries as well, and we look at what we're going to look at a figure in history who is very, very polarizing. However, someone who claimed their freedom during the last time Saturn was in Aries was Princess Di. Okay, so she got divorced. She claimed her freedom. She went out to
Interesting.
live her life, and then for some reason that it's a whole other podcast, you know, the hierarchical control, the establishment didn't want her having that freedom. Posh, the boot comes down. So we've already got lived experience showing what potentially could happen. And you know, last time Saturn was in Aries as well, we also had something called Operation Desert Strike, which was when the US basically went back into Iraq after Desert Storm to, you know, bring peace, apparently, because of issues around Iraq and the Kurdish civil war. So we can really see how this can be whipped up very quickly into martial law, into removing aspects that the establishment deem aren't okay, and how, quite frankly, the jackboot is going to be used to persuade us all to have digital ID.
really interesting. I hadn't correlated Saturn in Aries last time with Princess Diana, but that's very, very interesting. And you know, if we're being really depressing about it, Aries is war.
Let's.
Aries is war. So we do need to be aware that these things can escalate. And I think, you know, civil unrest that is being stirred up in certain places to do with religious fanaticism will also feed into this authoritarianism, if that makes sense to people who are listening. I'm sure it might resonate with some of
Absolutely.
you. Yeah.
Now, and just thinking about that as well, not to really depress people, but you know, last time Saturn was in Aries, that was when we went towards the Good Friday Agreement. Now that's been very quiet for a while. It's the end of a cycle, so we could be seeing religious factions again on the other side of the sea, you know, potentially being stirred up once again. For patriotic reasons, but I feel here in the UK, like you, there will be unrest. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, well, there's already a lot of unrest over here. And, you know, I know our friends in the USA, you know, they're living through a very tumultuous period as well over there, to say the very least. You know, that's a very delicate way of putting it. But also, you know, in Australia, they've already had these digital bills going through under the guise of child safety. But if you know, you look a little bit deeper into that, you can see that there is some underlying benefits to the government, shall we say, there as well. So these are some of the, you know, potential shadows. And I wrote about this last year as well when I was looking ahead to Saturn going into Aries, because yeah, you don't really get much clearer than Saturn going into Aries and your identity being restricted, you know. But equally, amongst all of these potentials, all of these, you know, more depressing potentials, you know, people will want to be empowered. Yeah, it will be met with resistance. So I think this is the time that we've talked about in many previous podcasts, this kind of threshold where we're going into this Aquarian aeon, because don't forget, there's no planets in Pisces anymore after after August, actually, because the North Node will linger there until August. But really, the focus is moving away from Pisces. So we're kind of moving through the kind of end of this clear up from the age of Pisces, and we are really coming much closer to Aquarius now with Pluto and the North Node. So as we've talked about many times, there are people that will, you know, choose different timelines or choose different realities amongst all of this. You know, there are going to be those of us who are really focusing on the higher Aquarian ideals. So we really need to put our focus towards independence, self-governance within communities. You know, that's Aquarius, is creating the community that supports and sustains you. So you can be outside of these systems as much as possible if you don't want to participate in them. You know, I don't, but people might.
That's one of those things I'm just reminded of, you know, kind of an old Sunday school lesson, you know, Jesus in the temple of, you know, pay to the Romans what's due to the Romans and pay to God what's due to God. You know, occasionally we're going to have to pay our taxes, we're going to have to play the game, but the majority of the time we can be outside the system. We can consciously choose to not participate physically, but also to not participate energetically. And that also means really thinking about the ways that we communicate, the ways that we interact on social media. You know, how and what is your community going to going to look like as well. And I think for us, expanding our kind of star community is going to be really important in next year to give the tools to be able to really navigate, what is going to happen for us all. It just, it's kind of a year which is going to be, very liberating and very inspiring, but also quite depressing and disheartening. But you step into your independence, you step into your sovereignty, and which one are you going to choose? It's not bypassing. Which one are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to walk, kind of the totalitarian tiptoe? Or are you going to choose to rebel? And we know that a lot of people are going to rebel. For example, this Saturday, I know there's a massive protest on digital ID. So people are really beginning to become galvanized about it. Outside the BBC, if anyone's interested.
Interesting. Don't start on the BBC. We will be.
That's another podcast next year.
Yeah, well, of course, speaking of censorship, it is very interesting now because here in the UK, you do have to be very aware of what you say online. Like, there is no way around that now. People are getting prison sentences for saying things that the government thinks they shouldn't be saying. So, we're already on that edge. And like I say, in Australia, it's been snuck in, in a slightly alternative format. But it's happened over there already. So
And it is incredibly scary. It really is.
it is. It
And
is.
even when we're podcasting, we're still being conscious about what we are saying and how we are phrasing it. Now, I'm very blessed, and I will always keep saying this. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union because I'm allowed to say certain things. But the number of people who have been prosecuted or stripped from their jobs for just stating the obvious, just to get a little bit political, but someone who said that Britain is a Christian country, well, actually, our head of the Church of England is the king. So it's factually correct, yet you are punished for saying something that is truth. There's going to be, I can see a lot of the civil unrest will be around that aspect as well as other aspects, but there'll be a lot around that. It's, 1984, it's a novel, people. It's not a guidebook to how to live.
Yeah. So it's very, very interesting how, this has all happened very, very fast.
Very fast.
If we think 5 years ago, because when I was thinking about this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, which we know hasn't happened for thousands and thousands of years, even though they come together in Aries about every 333 years. This is something that is unprecedented, something that we will not witness in 100 lifetimes. So when I'm thinking about this and when I'm tuning into it, for me, it's very much the same feeling in the ethers that was building before the great conjunctions in Capricorn of January 2020. Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, all together in Capricorn. So these are paradigm shifting astrological events, and the world is not been the same since January of 2020. So now we're looking at the next turn of the wheel, so to speak. So the things that unfold in the wake of this conjunction will affect humanity for a very long time. And in our own personal lives as well, just to bring it back down to a personal level before we start really ranting about politics, which we love to do. Where is this happening for you? We're both Aries. We've both got our suns in early degrees of Aries. So for us, this is incredibly significant. But everybody has 0 degrees Aries in their chart. And this is where this really big energy is coming in. So we know that the powers that be understand astrology. So one of the ways we can take our powers back is by understanding astrology ourselves and using it to create change in our own life. And one of the ways we can do that is by mapping these cycles in our own chart, but also through astrology, we come to know ourselves. So we go through with astrology, which is, you know, very much ruled over by Aquarius. We go into a process of, you know, what Jung would call individuation. So we know ourselves. We know the truth of who we are. We know our Aryan, Aquarian, authentic self. And that makes us much harder to manipulate and control, because overall, you know, what we're living through right now in this technological age is, as I said many times to students and probably on the podcast before, it is a battle for consciousness. It is a battle for your conscious attention and awareness. So we really need to be aware of what's going on in the world, but also, what are you feeding into? You know, we want to take our energy away from these systems and think about Aries, what, you know, crystallization. What can we crystallize with Saturn in Aries? What is the new vision? Aquarius is the future as well. So what is the future vision? You know, where do you want to build your community? You know, how can you be self-sustaining if you don't want to live within these systems? How can you break free of them? So we really want to know ourselves, have integrity, another Saturnian word, and decide where we're going. So for me, the energy of this year can also really help us to break free of these systems, if that is our desire.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I'd even add another level is once you've truly understood yourself through your astrology, you then begin to understand not only your astral makeup, but also your energetic makeup, and how then you can use your own personal magic through Aquarian magic in order to, I want a better phrase in saying, battle the forces that try to control our consciousness as well. So part of the work that we do is to literally, you know, really hold our own energy and to consciously direct our energy through our magical work to in order to ensure that we are not ensnared by what I'm seeing is like the trawler net that literally comes through to suck people in. So there are lots of tools and techniques that can be shared and can be learnt to really understand yourself and to protect your consciousness, but also to how to go into battle when someone's trying to battle against your consciousness and trying to suck you back into the abyss that is the kind of 3D matrix as I see it. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really important year. I know you said it was the year of the magician, and I very much see it as the fire magus, you know, the kind of flames coming out of the palms and being able to kind of direct the fireballs in order to create what we need to do. So that's what I was
I
seeing.
was just thinking that, you know, a magician is somebody who, you know, just to say, you know, women can be magicians too. It's a phrase that we often, you know, we think of a male figure, but women are magicians, women are sorceresses, enchantresses. And one of the key skills of any kind of magical practice is to know yourself, but also to be able to direct your consciousness. So your mind is your own. We're going to talk about the sphere of the mind actually in astrological magic next week. We're coming to the sphere of
Yeah.
Mercury. So we're actually, this is fresh in my mind at the moment. You know, it is, everything is mental, is one of the kind of principles from the Kabbalion, you know. So we hear from the ancient Hermetic teachings, you know, as above, so below, these teachings that remind us what is within is manifesting without all the time. And as your magical power grows, so does your ability to materialize your thoughts. So it's something we have to be really aware of, is where we are focusing that energy. So with Aries, we know what we want, you know, and Aries is never indecisive about what they want. But we have Urania going into Gemini. So we've got this kind of big kickoff to the year, haven't we? February is just like, wow, you know, this conjunction,
Huge.
there's a Mercury retrograde, there's eclipses. We go through the equinox, a bit more Aries energy, Mars going into Aries, you know. But then when we come around to kind of this Beltane type time, we've got Uranus going back into Gemini as well. So Gemini is Mercury ruled, and obviously the Magician card in traditional tarot is associated with Mercury. So one of the other key skills we learn in magical practice or in astrology when we're looking at oppositions, opposite signs, oppositions in the birth chart, is the ability to see beyond polarity. So what often happens with Gemini energy is that our attention is diverted, constantly diverted from one side to the other. You know, we're confused. It's a chaotic energy, right? Urania in Gemini. So again, you know, we have to be so solid and grounded in ourselves to be able to, you know, really utilize this energy, because we're only going to see more technological advancements. We're only going to see more attempts to draw us into this kind of virtual reality. So our biggest tool is always going to be our discernment, because it's going to be even harder to tell what is real and what is not by the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say when Urania goes into Gemini, which is the 24th, 25th of April, because both Urania and Venus go into Gemini at the same time, which I think is really kind of quite powerful as well. They're kind of moving together, but the shifts in technology that I think we're going to see is going to be exponential, you know, while she's there. But we're already seeing massive changes in technology, but it's she's there till 2032. You know, what is your reliance now on your phone, for example, and what will it be in 2020, 2032? It's really scary how much AI particularly is advancing, and this is going to happen. It's going to be quicker and quicker and quicker. So can you keep yourself grounded? Can you be discerning? Or are you literally going to mold yourself and become part of the technology? I can't remember what film it is. I think it's Lucy, where she literally becomes a data chip. So she has all this information and then she kind of explodes in like data and becomes what the old-fashioned USB sticks. You know, are you going to do that? You know, are you literally going to be walking around? And I think that's a really important question. I know you and I both bang on about it, but you know, how many times do we distractedly pick up our phone every day just to do something? But the shifts in AI, you know, what when you're reading something or watching something, what is going to be real, what is not going to be real? And I think there's going to be a real it's going to be difficult, actually, more than anything else, to really discern. So the more that you can work on yourself now and work on your energy and work with your magic is going to be so so important.
Absolutely. And I think it can even, you know, expand beyond this, you know, AI infiltration as well, because what I saw yesterday, or maybe a couple of days ago actually now, is, you know, we've got this Neuralink thing now creeping into the collective awareness. We've got Kim Kardashian advertising Neuralink. So make of that what you will, because we know that people like the Kardashians are used to influence the masses. So we've got her now glamorizing Neuralink. So we know the end game with these kind of technologies is, you know, the very shadow side of Aquarius, where, you know, we're all going to be in one way or another linked into this kind of hive mind,
Mm.
where, our tweets are monitored now, but what's going to happen when your thoughts are monitored, you know? So these are the things
Again,
that, again, we don't want to be super depressing, but I do want to point out the shadow aspects of these transits, because where humanity is at the moment, there are going to be a lot of people that do get drawn into this, or forced into it, because you can't function in society without it. So these are things we really need to be aware of. And, Urania and Gemini transits, historically bring huge waves of new inventions and technologies. So with the point we're already at, to think of that accelerating further is slightly overwhelming. So the outer software is being upgraded, so we need to upgrade our inner software to be able to function.
absolutely. And I'm just thinking now of how many kids for Christmas are going to get virtual reality headsets. I don't know if you've ever watched Red Dwarf. I'm a big fan of Red Dwarf, but there is kind of Better Than Reality, where they're literally plugged into headsets and they're there for years and years and years living this amazing virtual life. Yet you come back and they're like, actually, no, they're completely wasted away because they're living in another reality. And that is one step closer to I can't remember what the film is now. I was watching, where they are producing babies in big chambers. It's literally one step away, isn't it? And growing babies, and each of Superman. That's what I was watching the other day. Each baby's programmed for the role it's going to take. Virtual reality. At what point does do we become the battery in the Matrix? Okay, what point do we become the battery, and is the Matrix really a documentary or a film?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, that's one of the other um, things that will come into play very much in the future, isn't it? The kind of synthetic fertilization process and birthing process. So
Yeah.
again, these things are happening very, very rapidly. So that's
So
Uranus
what
and
I would say
Gemini.
to you, dear listener, have another mince pie because we haven't finished yet. If you ain't impressed, crack open the Lindor chocolates because we've got another one to come for you. So we are not remotely being depressing. I think we're being quite realistic. But what I want to talk to you is we're kind of taking you through the first really intense part of the year. We've got Beltane, and then we come up to summer solstice. And the joy of joy, 19th of June, we see Chiron going into Taurus. Can't wait. So excited. Everyone's very excited if you've got Chiron in Taurus. But these are the wounds for those who've got that of, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving enough, for any of us who are in our early 40s. You may be starting to feel that energy coming up. So one of the reasons I'm mentioning it is because that is going to be a bigger transit in 2027. But when we're in a state where we don't feel good enough, where we don't feel that we are enough, that we're not deserving enough, that is actually when we slip into technology to look for the answers. And actually, we don't want to be doing that. We want to really be sat in circle together and really expressing this physically. So don't look for the shortcuts in technology is how I'm kind of segueing that back, because there won't be any answers, because the answers are all there for you. So anyone who's got Chiron and Taurus, you've got that juicy little transit coming up. Any thoughts, Maria?
Isn't it?
Because we've both got Chiron and Taurus.
I know, I'm just very grateful it's in the very late degrees. And still about 7 years before the Chiron return, which everyone has around as they approach 50, just as an interesting astrological side note for those who might not know about Chiron returns. But our generation, you know, I think it's 1977 to 1984.
Mhm.
Chiron return is incoming, Chiron return in Taurus, more fully in effect in 2027, as you said, because I think she shifts back into
Yeah.
Aries in September next year. So we have that kind of June to September period where she dips her toe in and then she goes back out and returns to Taurus, I think, in the spring of 2027, April maybe.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes.
That's good. I've got done that all from memory. I haven't got the dates up on my screen. So we've got that kind of little threshold there. But I think what's
Mm.
interesting is, you know, Chiron in Taurus is all about the wounds of the body.
Yeah.
It's all about, you know, how beautiful we feel. It's all about how embodied we are. It's Venus. So if we are feeling wounded in our body image, of course, you know, virtual reality is an appealing idea. And also, what I'm thinking of as well now in the collective, again, you know, we've got these weight loss jabs, we've got this kind of skinny culture coming back in, which was very much, you know, our generation, you know, when we were coming of age, you know, that was the last
Mhm.
time, you know, everybody was very, very thin in the media. And now this is also creeping back around again. So, yeah, these are things to echoes to watch out for in the collective. So the healing journey for us all with Chiron and Taurus will be about reclaiming our value, you know,
Yeah.
reclaiming our ability to love ourselves in amongst all of this media kind of editing and filtering and neurolinking.
Mm. And if you really think about that, and you really think about the collective of kind of, you know, claiming our inherent worth and how we are being shown, particularly as women, I know some men do this, and that we are not worthy of X, Y, and Z, and that we're being very, very pigeonholed into, you know, this is what you should be. You know, Kim Kardashian, you know, flogging Neuralink, you know, in her little Skims underwear, isn't a great example. But also, and I'm going to have to put this in here today, you know, if we are to claim our inherent worth, we are to reject the archetype of Bonnie Blue and to really reclaim our bodies for ourselves as well. So she's kind of very much skewing the energy. By the way, I think she's been arrested in Bali for the latest escapade with
We haven't mentioned her for
young
a
men.
while.
But
I
we really
literally
have
thought that this
to.
morning.
Hi, Bonnie, if you're listening. We really can't let that seep into the collective consciousness. I can feel there is going to be a lot more around the worthiness of women coming up. I'm going to leave it there,
Yeah,
but
well,
that's a big theme.
it's a very distorted perspective on bodily autonomy, isn't it? Which is being fed to the younger generations. But that could be a whole Chiron and Taurus workshop.
We'll do a podcast on that, chaps.
But speaking of worthiness, I think we go through the solstice, don't we, with a Mercury retrograde in Cancer because they're all in water signs this year. I think the first one is in Pisces in February, 29th of June, I think she's retrograde
29th of
in,
June. You're so good at this.
wow, I've been learning,
I've got the
I've been
dates,
studying
29th of June. You're right.
in Cancer. And then, you know, just amongst all of that, Jupiter goes into Leo. Jupiter goes into
Finally, good
Leo
news,
in
people.
sort of, yes, sort of.
Okay,
Um,
shush. Actual podcast so far.
but the South Node will join her very quickly. So we're looking very much at Leo shadows as well as,
Mm.
you know, this expansive energy. And I do have particular fondness for Jupiter and Leo because the last time that transit happened 12 years ago, um, I started writing astrology. I started posting astrology online. So I do have
Mm.
a love for this part of the Jupiter cycle. And I do feel like Jupiter really loves to be in Leo, of course, you know. I know she's exalted in Cancer, but personally, maybe it's me being a fellow fire sign, I like Jupiter in Leo. Because, you know, we've got this very expansive, abundant, golden Jupiterian energy. And then you've got Leo, which in its positive aspect is so creative. It's so sovereign. It's so empowered. It's just like, you know, when you tune into this transit, you can just see like a heart on fire, you know, that real lion-hearted Leo energy. You know, it's leadership, it's courage, it's trining Aries. You know, there's a beautiful kind of fierce, fiery energy here. And both of these signs are about self-identity, about knowing who you are. You know, Leo is ruled by the sun. So it's a beautiful 12-month long transit. But um, but as she comes into Leo, she will oppose Pluto in Aquarius. So these are now halfway point from that conjunction of 2020 that happened in Capricorn with Saturn in January 2020. So this is the halfway point of that cycle. And this polarity of Leo to Aquarius, like I said, it's really highlighted because, you know, about 2 weeks later, the nodes go in. We've got a solar eclipse in Leo in August the 12th. So I think Mars is going into Leo around that time as well. So there's a big emphasis here on these two signs. And as I've said, you know, hierarchy, anarchy, the royalty, the people. But also, this is this polarity is so important because Aquarius is the aeon that we are heading into. And Leo is kind of the beginning of time. It's like the first great aeon, you know, that we really see very tangibly imprinted in Earth's history, this old Egyptian energy. So we've got this huge kind of karmic balancing to do with this axis. And, you know, when we think back to the stories of the age of Leo to Egypt to Atlantis, what do we hear over and over again? They destroyed themselves with technology. They got too power hungry, you know, they started to believe in their own hubris, you know, they forgot that they were connected to all of life. So, you know, when we think about the Egyptians, they were also bringing in that Aquarian energy, that opposite side of the polarity, you know, with their knowledge of the stars and of the cosmos. They understood cosmology maybe better than any other civilization that we have good records of. So this polarity is really coming into play. You know, are we going to do this again?
I really hope not. I think I've got the energy for another collapse of an aeon, but no, we do have the choice, and now we have, you know, we've got hindsight, haven't we? We've seen what's happened before, so we know how we can act going forward. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting because not only is it opposite Pluto as well when Jupiter goes in, she's square Chiron as well. So that could be a really interesting kind of mood to take us through. So make sure you're supporting your nervous system.
Interesting. A Jupiter Pluto Chiron square in the fixed signs. What could possibly go wrong?
What? Nothing could go wrong. Anyway, should we cheer them up even further? So we go. I guess the last big kind of transit to mention in 2026, and you've got all these big planet shifting signs, but really once we get to equinox, it just kind of quietens down a little bit, and then all we have to look forward to is a Venus and Mercury retrograde. in Scorpio, which I think is be just the icing on the cake, the cherry on top of what is going to be a massively powerful and transformative year. And I know we've been miserable on this podcast, but there's going to be a lot of good coming next year, and particularly if you can really harness your energy. So the last in October the 3rd, we've got Venus retrograde in Scorpio. So really deep reflection on love, on relationships, on personal values, and looking as well at our emotional interconnectedness with other people. Maybe we're actually beginning to crave humanity again, and really this for me feel like it's very much a gathering of the tribes as well, the kind of shedding and releasing, and then actually really finding your tribe and the aspects of self which have been really hidden. And at the same time, Mercury is going to go retrograde in Scorpio. So we're just coming out of a Mercury retrograde at the moment. She's been in Scorpio, she's direct in Scorpio at the moment. And I have found it particularly interesting with all the things that are now being revealed. And my prediction or not is the things that haven't been revealed this year by this time next year will be revealed. Particularly if you're following particular files, shall we say. Maria, what do you think? Looking forward to a
Disappearing into
Venus
the void
retrograde in
here.
Scorpio.
It's going really dark here as we're recording, so I'm kind of disappearing into the void. So I'm just illuminating myself with
It's like the Blair
candlelight.
Witch now.
You're watching on YouTube. I kind of look like I'm emerging from the cosmic yoni with my background.
The throne is among us today, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't want to disturb the recording by getting up and switching the light on, so I'm going to talk to you from the darkness. But yeah, I think this Mercury retrograde in Scorpio has given us a real glimpse into what we can expect for next year. And one thing that I found really interesting is the Diddy documentary being released. If any of you have seen that on Netflix, of course, we grew up in that era, so I remember all of the Biggie and Tupac drama, all of that kind of stuff that surrounds Diddy. So if you watch it, or if you follow that in any way, and you look at the astrology, because he is actually a Scorpio. He's a Scorpio with a Virgo moon and Mars in Capricorn. So you can see how he's ended up in the position that he's in. So he's manifesting obviously the worst of these signs. But just the scorpionic themes that emerged throughout his story and this documentary, and it being released at this time, for me is really interesting, because it's giving us a light glimpse. Actually, I feel a light glimpse scratching the surface of what actually goes on in these circles, these circles of the elite. So for me, I think there's going to be more layers to these things unfolding as we come to the end of next year, in this next Scorpio retrograde with Venus and Mercury. But Diddy and his baby oil aside, I think this is probably one of the most, well, maybe the most important Venus retrogrades in our lifetime, because it's going to be the last one in Scorpio. So the Venus star points shift only once every 100 years or so. So we generally have the same star points for a lifetime. So the first Venus star point in Scorpio was in 1926. And 2026 will be the last one. The Venus pentagram will lose its Scorpio leg. It's transitioning into Libra. So from then on, every time Venus conjuncts the Sun, either retrograde or direct, for these star points will either be Aries, Gemini, Capricorn, Leo, or Libra. So this is hugely
Wow.
significant when we think of how Venus rules over the divine feminine and how her cycles and her sacred geometry have been honored by priestesses, since at least the age of Leo. So this is hugely significant, particularly as this star point takes place at 0 degrees of Scorpio. So you couldn't really make it up, hey? 0 degrees of Scorpio on the 24th of October. Mercury's lurking around too.
She does.
Lurking around in the shadows there too. So this is a hugely significant transition for us collectively and also personally. So we really want to look at that Scorpio area of our chart. Yeah, we really want to go deep there, because when we have repetitive retrogrades in a sign, there is something for us to understand there. Like, we had multiple retrogrades in Leo for a couple of years. If you remember, we had a Venus, a Mars, and a couple of Mercuries. So it makes this archetype very important. So, this is a transitional period, this Samhain period of 2026, which leads us, towards the end of the year, and all of the outer planets kind of starting to go direct again, as we go towards Yule of 2026. But I think next year is going to be a year that we need to be prepared to move forward very quickly, because we've been lurking around in the swamp for quite some time with this
Agreed.
Pisces energy. So next year, things are going to be happening so fast. So I would say, this is the year for us to really become the magician, become the Aries, become the Aquarian, become the outlier.
Yeah.
And really use astrology, because this is our gift of the Aquarian Aeon is astrology, is understanding these cycles of time, because astrology isn't just your birth chart, is it? Astrology is intertwined with magic. Astrology tells us about the cycles of humanity. All of the wisdom of the ages is encoded within astrology. So I would say, start to use this tool, not to go into fear, but to prepare yourself and to choose the right times to set into motion your own contributions to change at this time. Because the more of us that are aware, the harder it is for these things to sneak in. And that's my
I don't
thought.
think I could have put it any better myself, actually. And that feels like a really good time to kind of leave this mildly depressing end of the year review. Next year is going to be amazing. I absolutely promise you. But we've got a couple of bits of things to share with you just before we wrap up. So you will see on Substack and on our social media that over Epiphany, starting on Boxing Day till the 6th of January, Maria is running a beautiful free Telegram group. We'll be posting the Epiphany questions on Substack as well. So you are more than welcome to come and join her for some really beautiful kind of transmissions in order to plan our year based on the astrological goddesses. And we'd love to invite you on the 6th of January to join us both for a star mapping event where we're going to be taking you through the major transits of 2026 and how they interact with your personal birth chart. On the 18th of January, there is a silver spiral, the Invocations of Ari Anwad, the silver spiral, which Maria teaches with the Glastonbury Goddess Temple. We're going to have a free event for you to join in. So we're going to put all the details below. This is just dates for your diary, and I will be making my guest appearance with her for that as well. So you're so welcome for that. And finally, the big event, 20th of February next year, we will be hosting an online event all day. Lots of astrology, lots of magic, lots of activations, lots of really beautiful astrological treats planned for you. So all the details will be coming up, but again, you are most welcome to join us for all those events, one of those events, because we are so grateful to you all for listening this year and supporting. So I guess final words are from both of us, from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much for all your love, your support, the comments we get on the podcast. Thank you for joining us on events. And I'm looking forward to recording with Maria next year. I don't know if she's looking forward to recording with me.
It'd be like less depressing next year.
So we will be back next year with another podcast, but we'll put all those events and dates on Substack, on our social media, and we would really look forward to seeing you in person, whether in person or virtually next year, where you can come and learn astrology, come and learn astrological magic, really understand how you can become a true leader of the Aquarian Aeon. So, any last words, Maria?
Just again, thank you for listening and for taking part in all of the things that we offer, because there is so much out there these days. So we really appreciate you taking time to listen to us. And yeah, thank you for all of the beautiful feedback that that we receive as well. It's yeah, like we said before, the podcast emerged from a dream last winter solstice. So to still be here recording 12 months on is really exciting.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So, I guess from the both of us, happy solstice, blessed you, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will see you on the podcast in 2026. Lots of love.
Bye from the void.